Chapter 21. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Snape announced the simple and rough rules, except for the senior students who were watching the fun whispering, the first-year students did not make any extra movements, but took a step back in unison. Draco was walking side by side with Shaw, but he saw that the two idiots Goyle and Crabbe also stepped back tactfully. He opened his mouth, then took a step back, acknowledging the fact that Shaw was the invisible prefect. TSK, I didn't expect the students of this class to be so timid, so disappointing. Snape's eyes were empty, and he said sarcastically, then looked at Shaw again. Black, what an ancient and noble family, but I didn't expect that you would be such a vulgar person. Do you think you are what everyone expects? Shaw and Snape looked at each other, tit for tat, neither giving in, and said calmly. I am now a first-year prefect. So, may I ask the Dean whether Slytherin has a tradition of challenging the superiors? I think the head of Slytherin is the position I should take. Snape's calm eyes moved, and he walked around Shaw a few steps. Arrogant, are you really the son of the elegant Regulus? I'm afraid you are the illegitimate son of Sirius, that fool. The atmosphere in the lounge was solemn. No one dared to say a word, but they also admired Shaw for daring to confront his own Snake King. Shaw did not respond. If he entangled with Snape on the issue of Sirius, it would only arouse the other party's anger, so he still asked. Please be fair, Dean, please ask the 2nd to 7th grade prefects to come, I want to challenge them. Snape clenched his fist and snorted coldly. I remember your punishment hasn't been issued yet. It seems that a semester of confinement can calm you down. Starting tomorrow, come to my office after 6 p.m. I hope the slug's mucus can teach you the hierarchy. After making the judgment, Snape did not intend to call other grade leaders. He wanted to go out as soon as he lifted his robe. Shaw sighed. The old bat was really petty. He took out a photo from his pocket and flicked it with 2 fingers. The photo flew towards Snape like a dart. Snape saw the photo coming back and caught it with his hand. His face changed drastically after seeing the content, but he showed a deep affection in the next second. Dean, I think this gift is enough to offset my confinement. I have channels to find more photos, and I will prepare Christmas gifts for the Dean in advance. Snape's brain occlumency was very advanced, and he quickly returned to indifference. He quickly thought about the source of Shaw's photos. After all, the other party's surname was Black. He paused and was really moved by Shaw's Christmas gift. Thinking of Dumbledore's attitude, he continued to walk out, but the appointment was still announced. From today on, Shaw is the head of Slytherin. I think if there is any dissatisfaction, you know how to solve it. Don't cause trouble for me. When Snape's figure disappeared at the entrance of the lounge, there was an uproar in the lounge. The first-year wizards were even more proud of it. They came forward to surround Shaw and congratulate him. Draco even grabbed Shaw's shoulders excitedly. Sure, you are the headmaster, you are the king of Slytherin, we really dominate Slytherin. Alice was also stunned, not knowing what Shore had shown the dean to make such a ridiculous appointment. A freshman actually became the headmaster. It was a slap in the face of the senior students like them. Shore seemed to always be able to do things she couldn't imagine. She was not jealous. At this moment, Shore seemed to be radiating light in her eyes. Shore was not too proud, as any Harry Potter fan knew Snape's weakness. He pushed away the annoying Draco, walked out of the encirclement, and faced the senior students who had not left yet and were shocked. From today on, Slytherin, I have the final say. Everyone gather here at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. I have rules to announce. Those who don't show up will bear the consequences. Several rebellious students from pure-blood families were not convinced, such as the big fool Marcus Flint, who had not yet recovered from his injuries. He stepped forward to argue. Why, do you think? Bang! The next moment, before he could finish his words, he and the people behind him were knocked over by a silent golden light. Shore looked at these people with contempt. Not all children of pure-blood families are elites. This Marcus is a simple-minded guy with strong limbs, and he always stood up so considerately to make an example of him. Shore continued to wave his hand, and several students floated up, and then were hung on the wall lamp. It seems that you are not sober enough, then hang here all night. Put me down now, my not family will not let you go, brother, send a letter to Dad. Ah, you are humiliating the Flint family, you pure-blood traitor from the Muggle world. Shore ignored the incompetent rage of these people and glanced at the other people at the scene, looking at, conquering Hogwarts, first ring, again, the progress was already 65%, he chuckled and walked towards the dormitory, and Draco hurried to follow. Shore, you are so cool. Shore glanced at Draco. You seem to be from the pure-blood family group, you know I am very close to Muggles. Draco choked for a moment. It was only now that he seemed to realize that his position seemed to be wrong. The Slytherin boys' dormitory was large. Although it was under the lake, the powerful magic made it not damp. This was a 4-person room. Unfortunately, Draco and his 2 useless men were his roommates. Shore's bed was at the innermost, a tall and exquisite 4-poster bed with green silk curtains and a large snake pattern embroidered on the bedspread with silver thread. His owl cage was already on the bedside table. Shore took out various daily necessities from the ring, and placed books, tea sets, and clothes in different categories. Good. After Draco came in, he didn't rush to pack his luggage, but sat on his bed in a daze. As for Goyle and Crabbe, they got into the quilt and fell asleep without taking off their clothes. Shaw changed into pajamas and lay on the bed thinking about his words and deeds today. He felt that there was nothing wrong, especially after the confrontation with Snape in the lounge just now and dealing with a few troublemakers. The level 2 faith value increased by dozens of points. Sure enough, Slytherin is the most suitable place for him. After taking out a book and flipping through it for a while, Draco suddenly rushed to his bedside, and Shaw subconsciously clenched the quilt. What do you want to do? Don't climb on the bed. Draco paused and said hesitantly. Sure, you are so powerful. Sooner or later, you will become a powerful existence like the mysterious man. You will definitely lead the pure blood to regain glory. This should be something that the pure blood families are very happy to see, but why are they targeting you? Shore sighed, not knowing how to explain for a moment. Draco, this is a dispute of interests and ideas. In fact, as long as I am willing to compromise, I can immediately go along with those people. Why not? Why should I? As long as I am strong enough, only others will listen to me. I can take power and money as I want. Draco was stunned by Shaw's bold words, and he was speechless. After a long while, he asked another question that he couldn't figure out. Why do you get close to Muggle wizards? You are a pure blood. Shore looked at Draco strangely, but he thought that this broken kid could still be saved, so he explained his ideas to him. I am not close to Muggle wizards, but those pure bloods can't see the situation of the world clearly and are still holding corrupt ideas. I just don't want to wait for death with them. Draco looked confused, and the platinum hair on his forehead was almost curled into a. Shore reached out and stroked his hair and continued. Let me give you a simple example. There are probably tens of thousands of people in the British wizarding world, but 60% are Muggle wizards, and the other 40% are all half-blood wizards. There are no so-called pure bloods anymore. Draco immediately retorted. Impossible, my Malfoy family is the most noble pure blood. Shore sneered. I heard that the ancestors of the Malfoy family came to Britain with the Muggle king, and were given titles and became court wizards. When you look through the Malfoy family tree, ask your father what the identities of those who were expelled from the family were. They were definitely either squibs or Muggle wizards. Draco shook his head frantically, refusing to admit it. Shore could only give him a fatal blow. The purest blood family in the early years, the Gaunt family, due to intermarriage within the family, was either foolish or crazy, so it was extinct. Oh, by the way, their only descendant Voldemort was a pure half-blood. Draco's eyes widened, and he sat on the ground, speechless for a long time. The Dark Lord he admired the most turned out to be a half-blood wizard. Then the other party's loud slogan pure blood supremacy was so ironic, wasn't it? And his family was also a half-blood family. He didn't think Shaw would lie to him about this, so Draco was at a loss. Looking at the distraught Draco, Shaw shook his head and warned. In the future, there will be no soil for the concept of pure blood supremacy, but there is one thing that will never go out of date, that is, strength is respected. Chapter 22. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Nurmengard, Austria, in a room in the tower, a dozen grey-haired old men were discussing in a low voice. They were all dressed very respectably, exquisitely and stylishly. Nagel, how many people have you contacted? More than a dozen. Many old guys are dead, but their descendants are also very idealistic and very willing to join us. Well, not bad. Although many of our comrades were persecuted by various magical ministries, they are still doing well now. The most powerful ones have become the director of the law enforcement department. When will the master announce his return? Miss Vida doesn't know whether to come, but the master has regained his fighting spirit again. Miss Vida said she wanted to give the master a surprise, so she can't come for the time being. The old man in the lead had a serious temperament and was always thinking about how to persuade the master to get out of prison. His name was Abernethy. He was the most capable assistant under Grindelwald back then. He once got to the top of the Magical Congress of the United States and almost helped Grindelwald become the chairman of the Congress. On the top floor of the tower, the shabby cell that only had a rotten wooden bed before has now changed a lot. Not only is it filled with various gorgeous and exquisite furniture, but the floor is also covered with luxurious Persian cashmere carpets, and a circular bookshelf is full of books. Behind the large desk sits an old man with a distinguished temperament. His pair of blue eyes with silver edges seem to be full of divinity. The old man is Grindelwald, the Dark Lord who launched the first Wizarding War and the leader of the Wizarding Party. Since the prophecy of the doomed future has changed, this legendary wizard is naturally no longer decadent. Although he is still imprisoned in Nurmengard due to the oath with Dumbledore, he no longer wrongs himself. Although he has not yet summoned his old subordinates, the loyal saints who have been guarding him nearby are naturally ecstatic when they know that their leader has rekindled his fighting spirit, and all kinds of good things have been sent to him. Grindelwald is carefully looking at a letter at this moment. Dear Mr. Pearl, hello, I am very honored for your love. As for your question, why I chose to perform magic in the Muggle world, this involves my childhood experience, so I won't go into details. The initial reason can be summarized in one sentence: to fill my stomach. When I learned to perform magic, I found different fun. I enjoy the scene of being cheered by thousands of people. When I use grand and gorgeous magic that exceeds the cognition of ordinary people, I enjoy the audience's eyes looking at me as if they were looking at gods. Yes, to be honest, I am a vain and vulgar person who enjoys the pleasure brought by power and money, and I don't have any noble sentiments, but I know that human progress comes from desire, so I am not ashamed of it. As for Mr. Pearl's second question, asking me about my views on Muggles, I look at it from two perspectives. From the perspective of the superior, the people under his rule are not divided into wizards or not, but only useful and useless. A wise leader can put everyone where he should be. Even a pile of mud has its merits. From the perspective of a wizard who has lived in the Muggle world since childhood, Muggles are no longer ignorant and backward, and many advanced ideas are worth learning. Their so-called technology is already very advanced, and they can do many things that only magic can do, and they have even created conventional weapons that can destroy a city. On the contrary, I think the magic world is the ignorant party. It has been standing still for hundreds of years. The magical magic has made the wizards complacent and arrogantly despise the Muggles who are accelerating their progress. It is conceivable that if the status quo remains, within 100 years, the technology of Muggles will inevitably surpass the magic of wizards. At that time, the situation of wizards will be worrying. I have gone too far. As a student, what I should do now is to study hard. Recently, I am very distressed about a problem. My magic has lightning attributes, and all the spells I use are electric shocks. How can I control it freely? Your dear pen pal Shore Black. Grindelwald put down the letter, pondered for a long time, and gradually smiled at the corners of his mouth. He is quite honest, and has a unique vision and a great vision. He is also a rare elementalist and a natural leader. No wonder he will influence the future. Grindelwald took out the letter paper and began to write a reply. After a while, he put the letter away and rang the bell on the table. more than 10 seconds later, a serious man with white hair came in from outside the cell. He bowed respectfully after coming in. "Master," Grindelwald ordered. "Abernathy, send this letter to that little guy. By the way, find a way to get a phoenix as a gift before Christmas. He always uses owls to send letters, which affects my pen-pal relationship. As you command." Abernathy took the letter in both hands and did not question how difficult it was to get a phoenix, as the witch party that swept the world 50 years ago, although it is not as strong as before and is still in a dormant state, its power is still strong. The witch party is a group of idealistic wizards. Even if the years pass, as long as they are not dead and the leader calls for it, the witch party can make a comeback, and the phoenix is not exclusive to the Dumbledore family, otherwise so many wands are phoenix tails, and Fox's tail must be plucked bald, and the mascot of the New Zealand Quidditch team Macaws is a phoenix, so a phoenix can always be obtained. Grindelwald pondered for a moment and continued to give orders. Collect ancient books on lightning spells, collect scientific and cultural information from the Muggle world, and collect intelligence from the British magic world, Ask more people to collect, as soon as possible, go. Abernathy was ecstatic, because the leader's subtext was that he could start to gather his old subordinates with all his strength and make a comeback. Yes, sir. He bowed excitedly and left, thinking in his heart. It seems that I have to investigate the Hogwarts student named Shaw. How did he restore the master's fighting spirit? That there are no sunny windows in the Hogwarts dungeon, so there is no romance here when you open your eyes with the morning light. Thanks to his good biological clock, Shaw woke up at 6 o'clock. He got up and put on a well-fitting green and silver school uniform. After washing up, he saw that the other 3 people were still sleeping soundly in their beds, so he had to shout loudly. "Get up!" But the 3 people just turned over and were still sleeping soundly. Shaw sighed. Why did he always force him to conquer people with virtue? He stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers, and 3 fist-sized water balls appeared out of thin air, and then fell on the heads of the 3 people. Splash! The 3 people who were poured all over their heads and faces were instantly awakened by the cold water with a little electricity. They trembled all over, screamed and rolled on the ground, and looked doubtful about life. Shaw passed by them and said lightly, "Give you half an hour to wash up, and then gather in the common room." When they came to the dim lounge, there was naturally no one here. Even the few thorns hanging on the wall lamp last night were nowhere to be seen. He was not surprised, took out his wand and used flame to light the fireplace and wall lamp. He found a sofa to sit down, took out a set of tea sets and a small red clay stove from the ring, and started to make fire and boil tea. As time passed slowly, Draco and the other 2 rubbed their sleepy eyes and came to the lounge. Draco wanted to complain a little. He had insomnia last night, and now he got up so early, but seeing Shaw's peaceful tea-drinking posture and deep eyes, he swallowed his words again and followed Shaw's example to pick up the teacup Shaw handed him. As time approached 7 o'clock, the number of people in the lounge gradually increased. The 1st and 2nd graders were the most, all gathered around Shaw. Most of the 3rd, 4th and 5th graders came, and only a few 6th and 7th graders came. After these people came, they gathered in groups of 3 or 5 and whispered, quietly discussing what Shaw was going to do today. Alice came over. She was obviously dressed up today. Her delicate facial features were slightly powdered, which made her look more noble. She wore a slim school uniform with a few accessories, but she looked elegant in a dress. Draco gave up his seat very experiencedly. Alice sat down slowly and said with some worry, "Sure, it's impossible for everyone to be present." "What are you going to do?" Shaw said indifferently. "It's okay, my magic power has recovered." Although his words were calm, they made people's bones ache. In the last 5 minutes, the lounge was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. No one was talking, like the silence before a storm. Chapter 23. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As everyone's breathing became heavier, it was 7 o'clock. Shaw crossed the crowd and came to a high platform in the lounge. Looking at the students who gathered there coldly, seeing them yawning and looking lazy, he was so angry. Is this an elite college? However, Shaw had learned that it was not all the students' fault, because the Wizarding Society is too small. Good jobs are really scarce, internal competition is serious, and the trend of being lazy is prevalent. The magic of magic is easy to be self-sufficient. People who do not pursue a high-quality life generally have no desire to become stronger, therefore, the courses at Hogwarts are relatively relaxed. Under a certain concept of Dumbledore, the basic practice is happy education. Classes are held at 9 o'clock every day. After a big class in the morning, it is time to eat again. 2 classes in the afternoon last until 5 o'clock, and the day's courses are basically over. Therefore, people who are not particularly self-disciplined and studious basically cannot learn much in school. However, I will be a man who is determined to break the statute of secrecy and collect leaks of faith value from all over the world in the future. In this process, a large number of talents are naturally needed. Since the succession of the wizarding spirit has not yet begun, we can only cultivate it ourselves, so from today on, the relaxed learning atmosphere of Hogwarts will no longer exist, and the starting point is Slytherin. At this moment, everyone present was looking at Shaw, wondering what he was going to announce and how to deal with those who did not arrive. Shaw was a ruthless man who didn't say much. He just took out his wand and waved it. At the entrance of the dormitory, dozens of small blue water snakes slowly gathered. They began to swim through the cracks in the door into the dormitories with closed doors. After a while, muffled screams sounded one after another, and students with disheveled clothes and soaked bodies fled from the dormitory in a mess. Many people's steps were trembling and frivolous. This was not because of the cold, but because they were electrocuted. Several students who came out first began to curse. "Fuck, Shaw, are you crazy? Damn pureblood scum, I'm going to tell the dean that you attacked us. Ah, you will be expelled, this time for sure." These people not only swore at Shaw, but also drew their wands to cast a spell on Shaw, but before they could finish the spell, a blue anaconda coiled over their heads and instantly wrapped several people in its body. Shaw had used the water prison technique many times and had some experience. He could make the water prison hollow and grow tentacles with electric current from time to touch the people in the prison. In this way, punishment can be achieved without injury, and it can also make people remember deeply. No wonder the name of yang dial therapy, the nemesis of internet addiction in the previous life, was so notorious. The students who came out later, looking at the miserable appearance of several people in the anaconda, were so scared that they shut their mouths and immediately recalled the fear of being dominated on the train yesterday. Shaw ignored those people and continued to speak indifferently. "Okay, now that everyone is here, as the new headmaster, for the glory of Slytherin, I will announce 4 things. First, everyone must maintain an elegant demeanor at all times. Slytherin does not need sloppy and vulgar people. Walking, sitting, and lying must be meticulous. Second, abide by the study plan I set. Slytherin does not need ignorant people. From now on, all members will gather in the lounge at 7 o'clock every day for an hour of self-study in the morning, and gather at 7 o'clock in the evening for an hour of self-study in the evening. Third, set up a spell guidance club. Slytherin does not need weaklings. In the future, I will spend time teaching you spells on Saturdays and Sundays. Fourth, and the most important thing is to strictly prohibit blood discrimination. Don't mention pure blood supremacy. If I hear one sentence, I will punish you severely." Shore said it with great force. Naturally, some people who were dissatisfied wanted to interrupt, but the water prison technique taught them how to be human. Of course there will be resistance, but it's not a big deal. Just spend more magic to suppress it. The old bee's trick is really useful, so with a burst of squeaking accompaniment, Shaw continued. The prefects of each grade, including the invisible prefect, will have a small meeting with me in a while. Well, Draco will be the prefect of the first grade in the future. Okay, now you can speak. Who is in favor? Who is against? After speaking, except for a few troublemakers trapped in the water dungeon and foaming at the mouth, no one dared to speak in the lounge. They all looked at Shaw in horror. Even Draco, who was the prefect, opened his eyes wide. After a while, it was Alice who responded to Shaw. She came to the front of the crowd and said loudly, "The chief is right. The atmosphere of Slytherin should have changed long ago. Elegance, strength, and honor are what we should pursue, not blind arrogance, which will only lead to self-destruction." Draco's face kept changing, his fists were clenched tightly, and his mind kept thinking about what Shaw said to him last night. Finally, he also stepped forward and shouted loudly. I support the chief. Powerful, noble, and glorious, that's the real Slytherin. Goyle and Crabbe were two yes men, foolishly following and shouting. Then, except for a few people, the first and second grade students also stepped forward to gather under Shaw's stage, as Draco's childhood sweetheart, lion-headed Pansy Parkinson couldn't help but get anxious and hurried forward to pull Draco. Draco, you're crazy, do you know what you're doing? Uncle Malfoy will kill you. Draco shook off Pansy's hand and roared madly. I know what I'm doing. The glory of pure blood has long been a thing of the past. I want to become stronger and rebuild the glory of my family, instead of holding on to decadent ideas and slowly waiting to die. Pansy felt that she didn't know Draco, a playmate who only knew how to summon Daddy no matter what he did, and she was so confused. The heir of the Malfoy family announced his support for Shaw, and gradually, more and more people raised their hands and shouted Shaw's name. Noble, powerful, glorious. Sure, Shaw, Shaw. These shouting people also automatically squeezed out the pale and silent students from the crowd, and these people are basically the so-called pure blood and their followers, plus a few troublemakers who fell out of the water dungeon. There are about 20 or so, from all grades. Shaw looked at the eyes of the students and felt very happy. He looked at the progress of the system task, conquer Hogwarts, first ring, which is already 95%, well, it seems that those troublemakers have to be dealt with a few more times. It is estimated that at least they will not be irritated in public to complete the task of the first ring. As for painting cakes for people now, it's useless. In the eyes of these people, his black family has already declined and can't give any actual benefits. It's better to cut the Gordian knot and directly use power and strength to force them. This is the most direct and fastest way to complete the task. After a few seconds of silence, he raised his hand to signal the shouting crowd to quiet down, and then said to those who were dissatisfied. You can disagree with my ideas and rules, I don't care, but since you are in Slytherin, and I am the head, I will never allow you to be mediocre. You can privately criticize and insult me, but if you don't follow my rules, don't blame me for being ruthless. Shaw's domineering aura made many people admire him. The younger the person, the more fanatical he was. Even Theodore, not a 28th grade pure-blooded student in the first grade, cheered for Shaw, and her 6th grade sister Gloria would not leave no matter how she persuaded him in a low voice. Dwydwa's character is not distorted, there will be a detailed explanation later. Alice's heart was pounding, and people like Shaw were men worth following. In her eyes, Shaw was really shining at this moment. The 20-odd people stammered, still wanting to refute indignantly, but when they saw several of their companions still twitching on the ground, they shut up tactfully. They made up their minds to go to Snape to complain and write a letter to their families. Seeing no objection, Shaw waved his hand and ordered. Since we are a little late today, we won't have morning self-study. You should clean up the common room and rearrange it to be suitable for study. Other prefects, follow me. Shaw took the lead and walked towards his room. There are 6 regular prefects in Slytherin, 2 each in the 5th, 6th and 7th grades, plus 4 shadow prefects, exactly 10, however, only 7 people obeyed Shaw's words. Those who didn't follow up included the 6th grade female prefect Gloria Knott, the 7th grade male prefect Montague, and a 4th grade shadow prefect, all of whom were part of the group of people who refused to obey. When Shaorio reached the dormitory entrance, he suddenly turned around and looked at the 3 people who were still hesitating, and said coldly. Do you still want me to treat you? How about I ask the dean to directly deprive you of your status as class leaders? Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It is breakfast time in the Hall of Hogwarts, except for those who count the seconds and stay in bed. Most people are eating breakfast in the hall. The atmosphere in the hall today is also very strange. To be precise, the students at the other 3 long tables kept sneaking glances at Slytherin. Did those little snakes take the wrong medicine? They lined up to eat. Are they under the Imperius curse? That's nothing. What's more outrageous is that a little snake greeted me politely just now. TSK, look at their dining etiquette, it's more awkward than before. The people in Slytherin were actually quite awkward, but after looking at Shaw, who was sitting in the first seat and eating meticulously, they continued to eat honestly. In their hearts, they recited what Shaw taught them: as long as I am not embarrassed, others will be embarrassed. Shaw did not make any strict terms. The small meeting just now was just to clarify the supervision tasks of the prefects. In general, the purpose is to make these lazy students better. As for the concept, it has to be done subtly. He can't really turn Hogwarts into a military school. If he dares to do that, Dumbledore will probably be the first to disagree. At the long table of Ravenclaw, Harry sat down to chat with Hermione and couldn't help whispering. "Is this the change that Shaw said? The speed is really fast." Now Hermione is also eating breakfast, imitating Shaw's elegant movements in the distance, and she can't help but admire him when she hears it. Yes, Shaw is really amazing. He conquered those people in just one night. Harry subconsciously imitated the elegant movements, but it was a little awkward. Hermione suddenly thought of something and turned her head to ask in surprise. "Where is Ron, who was with you? Why is he gone?" Harry was a little embarrassed and sighed again. "He's still sleeping. He dragged Seamus to play wizard chess until late last night. I called them when I got up early, but it was useless." Hermione pouted. "Harry, you should go to Slytherin. At the very least, you can come to Ravenclaw with me. Ron and the others are not motivated at all, and they will affect you." Harry didn't express any opinion, but a trace of pity flashed across his face. Hermione handed a universal spell book to Harry. "This is a family heirloom book lent to me by Shaw. I have memorized all of it. It is indeed much more detailed than the standard spells. You can take it and read it. If you don't understand, you can ask me. If I don't understand, we can go and ask Shaw together." "Okay." Harry didn't refuse. He took the book solemnly and looked up at Slytherin. Especially when he saw Draco, who was in high spirits beside him, he felt uncomfortable. Obviously, they knew Shaw at the same time. Draco and Alice sat on Shaw's left and right. Alice took a sip of milk and said softly, "Sure, my grandfather told me that he has persuaded the 8 school directors not to trouble you for the time being, but some purebloods have already complained to the Ministry of Magic. Should we be more restrained?" Shore swallowed a steamed bun and looked at Alice confidently with burning eyes. "Minister Fudge is still the headmaster's yes-man. There is no need to worry about the Ministry of Magic for the time being. Next year, I will make those pureblood families have no time to care about me. At most 2 years, I will not be afraid of anything." Alice blushed a little when Shaw stared at her. She knew that this was not admiration, but pure worship. "Well, I believe you, but I'll let my grandfather keep a closer eye on you." Draco nodded hurriedly on the side. I will also try to convince my father." Shore glanced at Draco and thought that you might be disappointed. At this moment, a group of owls flew in from outside the hall. They kept circling above the hall, and swooped down after finding the target. For a while, the hall was in chaos, but the experienced people had already eaten. The same was true for Slytherin, but everyone was too busy to pay attention to their own desks, because there were too many owls in front of Shaw, and these owls did not bring gifts, but howling letters. Dozens of howling letters automatically floated from the feet of the owls into the air, and at the same time automatically opened to become an anthropomorphic blood-red mouth. These letters were densely packed and quite scary. Draco and the others looked at them in horror and quickly covered their ears, but Shaw smiled disdainfully and just waved his hand lightly. A group of rotating water flow appeared out of thin air, wrapping the letters in the water, and the roars that had not yet been made were blocked by the heavy water wall. Then a ball of fire appeared out of nowhere in the hollow water, and quickly burned all the roaring letters. Everyone in the hall looking at Shaw's smooth movements. Draco didn't know how to evaluate them for a moment. After a long while, Draco gave a thumbs up. "Cool." Originally, several bruised senior students were waiting to see the joke, but when they saw Shaw deal with the howler letter so neatly, they said something in their hearts, but they didn't know whether to say it or not. After there was no more excitement to watch, everyone started to sit down and open their gifts. At this time, Marcus ran to Shaw breathlessly and shouted arrogantly, "Sure, the dean asked you to go over. You're done." Shaw was not in a hurry. He took the napkin and slowly wiped the corners of his mouth before standing up, and stretched out his hand to signal other students who wanted to stand up with him to sit down. Only then did he look at the person who went to tell tales with a smile on his face. Marcus was really a very useful chicken. Marcus felt a little uncomfortable being stared at, and said in a timid manner. "What are you looking at?" "The dean will take back your appointment as the chief in a while. You won't be so arrogant for long." Shaw turned and walked towards Snape's office in the basement, leaving only one sentence. "Bucktooth chicken, enjoy the good time this morning. The rest of your life will be full of nightmares." Draco quickly picked up Shaw and his textbooks, glared at Marcus who was telling tales, and chased in the direction where Shaw left with two followers. Marcus and others scratched their heads. "What does Shaw mean? Why are you so calm?" Monta, who had just sat not far from Shaw, sighed and explained. "Is your head really a giant? The dean didn't do anything to Shaw last night, and he won't do anything to Shaw today. Although I don't know what he showed the dean, it doesn't matter. You just wait to be hung on the wall lamp all night. No one will save you tonight." Walking in the dark basement, Shaw thought about why Slytherin people like this dark environment. Maybe they enjoy loneliness. Arriving in front of Snape's office, the door opened automatically without waiting for knocking. Shaw smiled and stepped in. The smell in the room was very strange, and the temperature here was quite cold. The shelves along the walls were full of bottles and jars, and some of the jars were soaked with the remains of some animals. With this dim environment, it can be used directly without any decoration for shooting a thriller, but Shaw knew that the materials and potions on those shelves were all priceless, and it was easy to exchange them for tens of thousands of galleons. One of the two super invisible rich people in Hogwarts is here. "Well, it's a good place to get wool." The owner of this room is standing at a workbench and brewing potions. Even with his back to him, you can see that he is skilled in his movements. If it weren't for his greasy hair, he would still be quite elegant. "Do you know why I called you here?" Shaw said frankly while looking at the good things on the shelves. "The dean asked me to come here to praise me." Shaw's shameless words almost broke Snape's defense. He turned around and glared at Shaw and said coldly. "Hee, this is really the funniest joke I have heard this year. Tell me, why should I praise you? I hope your dog mouth can be as extraordinary as your face." Shaw took a few steps forward and watched Snape brewing a golden potion. He was familiar with this, the Felixer. Snape is worthy of being a potion master. An idea flashed through his mind and he said it. "Slytherin gives people a very bad stereotype. It is a hotbed of dark wizards in the eyes of some people. Didn't the dean suffer from it in his early years? So it's time to change." Snape looked at Shaw fiercely with cold eyes, as if he was choosing someone to bite. "What do you know? Did your father tell you? Or did Sirius, that idiot?" Shaw looked Snape in the eye without fear and answered the question irrelevantly. "Dean, let me discuss something with you. Do you want Harry's ugly photo? When the Felixer is ready, let me have a few drops." Snape felt that he had seen something new. The Black family was indeed full of weirdos. He waved his sleeves and continued to question. "You seem to have corporal punishment on students. The headmaster doesn't seem to have this right. How should this be explained? Aren't you afraid that the parents' yelling letters will fill your doghouse?" "Oh, I have just burned dozens of yelling letters, and the students were not injured. How can it be considered corporal punishment? At best, it is called loving care." Snape was choked and turned around to continue brewing the potion, saying in a faint tone. "You are such an arrogant kid. The power of the pureblood family is stronger than you think. You will be expelled." "I am not arrogant, and I believe in the principle. He will help me with it." "Hey, your shameful tricks again. Everyone has their own needs, right?" Snape thought he was already very good at making fun of people, but he didn't expect to see it today, so he said impatiently. "Go away. Don't cause me any more trouble. Okay, Harry's ugly photos must be delivered next week, and the dean must support me." Shaw took a bottle of energy potion from the shelf, and then walked out with his hands behind his back. This action made Snape laugh. Shaw came to the corridor outside and saw Draco and the other two squatting in the corner. Seeing that Shaw still walked out with a calm face, several people couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. "Sure, the dean didn't make things difficult for you, did he?" Shaw took the lead and walked to the third floor, stretching out his hand to show the bottle in his hand. "How could that be? The dean is actually a good person, and he gave me a bottle of energy potion and asked me to do a good job." Draco couldn't believe it. He knew the temper of Professor Snape, who often came to his house, but seeing that Shaw didn't seem to be lying, he couldn't help but want to worship him. Several people walked towards the charms classroom. This morning was the Transfiguration class, and they were studying with Gryffindor. Chapter 25. You are listening at novelfull.audio. One of the main features of Hogwarts is the spiral staircase. Its temper is just like the thoughts of some young ladies, always making people guess where the staircase will lead to next time. Shaw and his friends who came from the dungeon wanted to go to the third floor, but now they are on the fifth floor for some reason. Draco and his friends were stunned, and Shaw was also scratching his head. It was indeed a taboo for military strategists not to know the intelligence in advance. "Sure, shall we continue to go up the stairs? It's almost time for class. I heard that Professor McGonagall has a bad temper." Shaw glanced at the entrance to the third floor below, which was only a dozen meters away from them. He gritted his teeth and retreated behind the three people, took out his wand, and shouted. "You jump!" Draco and his friends were just confused, and their backs were suddenly pushed off the platform by a strong force, which scared them and made them scream and call for their mothers. Shaw followed suit and waved his wand while falling rapidly. When the four of them were about to reach the third floor, they slowly fell down like floating catkins under the effect of the level 3 levitation charm. Draco and the other two turned pale, their eyes were filled with tears, but when they landed safely, they hugged each other and shouted excitedly. "Draco, go back and find the senior students to record the rules of the spiral staircase." Shaw avoided Draco's embrace with disdain and walked quickly towards the Transfiguration classroom. The Transfiguration classroom is a circular stepped classroom with rows of desks distributed in a fan shape and many pointed windowsills around, making it look bright and clean. When Shaw came in, he saw a tabby cat squatting on the podium in front of him. He thought for a moment and decided not to provoke the older cat lady. He walked towards the desk area. At this moment, most of the students from the Snake College were there, but there were still many students from the Lion College. Harry, who was sitting in the first row, stood up and greeted Shaw when he saw him. "Sure, here." Shaw was stunned and a little surprised. He didn't expect Harry to come so early. He seemed to be reading seriously just now, but his best friend Ron was not around. He had thought that after tricking Hermione into going to Ravenclaw, Harry and Ron should be more in cahoots and degenerate, but now the situation is a bit wrong. Don't let the main plot be ruined. He is still planning to intercept it at the end of the term. Shaw came to sit down next to Harry and asked tentatively. "Harry, are you alone?" Harry was also very honest and said with an expression that could not be hidden. "Huh? Yes, Ron and Seamus got up late." Shaw saw a flash of disgust in Harry's eyes, and his heart was shocked. Would the kind savior be led astray? At this time, Draco also came over and hugged Harry's shoulders enthusiastically. "Hey, good morning, Harry." Harry turned around and saw that it was Draco, and greeted him shyly. "Well, good morning, Draco. Oh, and these two, why are your eyes red?" Draco sat down next to Harry, raised his head, and began to brag in his usual tone. "Harry, this is because Shaw took us on a 4-way flight just now. It was so cool. And, you don't know what I have experienced from yesterday to now. Shaw and I have been so exciting." Harry was curious and waiting to hear the next part. Shaw didn't care about Draco's bragging, but he felt something was wrong when he listened to it. In order to avoid the attack of the necromancer, he quickly interrupted. "Draco, shut up. Talking with your head raised doesn't show your nobility, it will only let others see your disgusting nose hair." Draco's expression suddenly stiffened, and he almost couldn't breathe, so he lowered his head and coughed. Harry looked left and right, and the more he looked, the more he felt something was fishy. Could it be? Sure enough, children born in the UK have crooked brains. At the right time, the bell for class rang. Professor McGonagall on the podium also jumped down and completed her transformation under the shocked eyes of the little wizards. Professor McGonagall, with her full aura, glanced at the whole audience and found that some students dared to be late. At this moment, 2 students ran in from the door in a panic. They were Harry's roommates Ron and Seamus. "Sorry, Professor, we got lost and were trapped by the spiral staircase, so..." Professor McGonagall was very dissatisfied that a student dared to be late for her class, and it was from her own college. "I think I should turn you into a map and a pocket watch respectively, so that you won't get lost. Gryffindor, deduct 5 points. Everyone, go back to your seats, and don't do it again." Ron and Seamus lowered their heads and hurried to the desk area. Seeing that the back row was occupied, they had to sit in the second row. They wanted to say hello to Harry, but they shrank their heads under Professor McGonagall's death stare. Shaw felt the older cat girl who didn't go to RUA before was right. When Professor McGonagall got ruthless, she even deducted the points of students from her own college. McGonagall felt it necessary to give the freshmen a warning. "If anyone is naughty in my class, ask him to leave and never come back." McGonagall waved her wand easily, and the podium immediately turned into a lively pig, running flexibly along the aisle between the desks, which made the students happy and eager to learn immediately. Transfiguration is the most complicated, dangerous and interesting magic you have learned in Hogwarts. As a professor, I want to warn you to be cautious. After McGonagall turned the pig back to the podium, she used her wand to outline rows of words on the blackboard, all of which were the iron laws and rules of transformation. If you want to learn transfiguration well, you can't do without solid theoretical knowledge. Why are you just watching stupidly? Why don't you take notes quickly? The students began to take notes disappointedly while listening to Professor McGonagall's explanation of the boring theory one by one. Shaw didn't know how other people were doing, but he was really serious in his studies, which was different from reading a textbook. Professor McGonagall was indeed a master of transfiguration. The basic theories were explained in a simple and easy-to-understand way, which was exactly the magic theory that Shaw lacked the most. Although he was now using spells with transfiguration attributes, it was all thanks to the assistance of the system. The theory class lasted for about an hour. After Professor McGonagall stopped, she gave each student a match and asked the students to turn it into a silver needle. Shaw didn't practice it. After he increased his transfiguration talent to 5 points, it was no longer difficult to turn a silver needle into a small trick, so he kept thinking about the notes he had just recorded. Harry and Draco beside him kept gesturing at the match with their wands, but the match didn't change at all. They all looked at Shaw, who was reading seriously, and Harry asked in confusion, "Sure, why don't you practice?" Before Shaw could answer, Ron, who was sitting in a row behind him, started to sneer. "TSK, I thought the great genius Shaw could do everything, but he's just as good as us." Harry's face changed, and Draco stood up suddenly. "Damn red-haired boy, say it again if you dare." Except Draco, all the students from the nearby Snake Academy stood up and stared at Ron. Ron felt a little guilty, but he still said with his neck stiff, "You're still right. But Shaw is good at pretending. Even if he's just as bad as us, he still looks so unfathomable." Professor McGonagall saw the movement here and came over to scold. "What are you doing if you don't practice well?" The momentum of the people in the confrontation immediately weakened, and they were all afraid of the serious Professor McGonagall. Shaw put down the book, didn't even look at Ron behind him, and explained to Professor McGonagall. "Professor, Draco and the others asked me to demonstrate it to them." McGonagall became interested. "Oh. So you've already learned it, Shaw?" Shaw didn't waste any words, took out his wand, and pointed it at the match on the table. Everyone nearby stared at him intently. Harry and Draco were full of confidence in him, and Ron, with jealous eyes, whispered, "May Merlin bless Shaw to fail." But then, something happened that stunned everyone. The match Shaw pointed at did not turn into a silver needle, but slowly expanded into a silver long sword with flowing brilliance, the red gems inlaid on the long sword sparkled. There were some exquisite patterns on the hilt, the sharp sword body shone with cold light, and the whole sword was very dazzling. "The big sword is mine." Draco and Harry happily fought for the sword, both wanting to take it for themselves. In the end, Draco, who got the big sword, stabbed Ron's head with the sword a few times, making Ron's face as red as his hair, and his fists were almost clenched with water. Professor McGonagall's pupils shrank for a second. She recognized that this sword was a replica of the sword of Gryffindor. She was even more amazed at Shaw's talent for transformation. After taking a deep breath, she slowly said, 10 points for Slytherin. Shaw, you have excellent talent for transformation. Give more guidance to your classmates. By the way, come to my office after class. Got it, Professor. Shaw bowed slightly and agreed. Even if the professor didn't say it, he still had a lot of questions to ask. In the following class, Shaw didn't continue reading, but carefully instructed Draco and Harry. You can't cast spells without thinking. You have to imagine the structure of the silver needle in your mind first. Well, take the 2 needles I made and observe them for 10 minutes. The 2's talent for transformation can only be said to be a little better than that of ordinary people. Under Shaw's hands-on teaching, they could only barely transform into a needle shape before get out of class ended, and the material was still wood, but even so, they were so happy that they lost their way. After all, things are afraid of comparison. Because Seamus behind him had exploded twice, Ron almost broke his wand, worthy of being a dragon and a phoenix. After class, Harry and Draco went to eat together, and it seemed that the 2 had become good friends for the time being. Shaw followed Professor McGonagall to the office, wondering what good things he could get besides asking questions. Chapter 26. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Professor McGonagall is not only a professor of transfiguration, but also the vice president, the real power manager of Hogwarts, so her office is naturally spacious, but the decoration here is not luxurious. In addition to the ubiquitous Quidditch elements, it is full of school affairs, the office full of documents and the cabinets full of materials all show the great contribution of Professor McGonagall to Hogwarts. Shaw saw it, but it didn't hurt his heart. Instead, he thought in his heart that he would have to find a similar assistant after he succeeded in his career. After sitting down in her office chair, Professor McGonagall took out a notebook from the drawer, looked at it for a few times, and handed it to Shaw at the desk. This is the experience of transfiguration that I summarized when I was in school. Your talent is no longer suitable for the normal teaching progress, so the notebook is given to you. If you don't understand it in the future, come and ask me. Shaw took the notebook, but he was not surprised. This is all as it should be, politely bowed to thank him. Thank you, Professor. McGregor pursed her lips, hesitated for a few seconds and then said. This morning, some students reported that you implemented some rules in Slytherin that were not in the school rules. As the vice president, I need to ask about it. Shaw was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that someone would report the situation to McGregor. He thought about it and said frankly. Professor, to be precise, it's not a rule. Those requirements are the qualities that a qualified Slytherin should have. It is also the original intention of the founder of Slytherin to establish this college. I am just tracing the source. McGregor was a little speechless. She really couldn't find a rebuttal for a while. After all, she wanted to implement the 3 points that Shaw asked in her own college. After thinking about it, she decided to discuss with Albus and then make a decision, so she instructed. It's a good thing to help classmates make progress, but I hope you will pay attention to the means. Corporal punishment is strictly prohibited in Hogwarts. Shaw showed a warm smile. I see, Professor. Then do you have any questions about transfiguration? Shaw saw the fatigue in Professor McGonagall's eyes and the piles of documents on the desk, so he said sensibly. Not yet, I will come back to bother you after I finish reading the notebook you gave me. Professor McGonagall's serious expression became a little kinder. Well, let's go to lunch. Goodbye, Professor. Watching Shaw walk out calmly, McGonagall sighed, always feeling that Shaw's character was very contradictory, and he couldn't tell what was weird about it. Shaw passed by the hall and looked at the hall from a distance, only to see Draco, Harry and Hermione sitting together at the long table of Ravenclaw. Is this the new trio? This plot is a bit twisted. Shaw laughed dumbly. Forget it, I can't care. He didn't enter the hall and went straight back to the dormitory, he nodded to the little snake passing by along the way, and asked Kresh to get some food. After returning to the dormitory, he began to read the transfiguration tips given by McGonagall while eating. He was absorbed in reading for 2 hours, and only came back to his senses when Draco came to him and said it was time for the charms class. On the way to the charms classroom, he was still thinking. The transfiguration master was a master, and he explained some key points of transfiguration in a simple and easy-to-understand way. He also mentioned that the ultimate secret of transfiguration was to give soul to dead things. Of course, this soul was not a real soul, but a kind of activation. Of course, this soul could also be a real soul, but Professor McGonagall said that was a realm of conjecture, and Dumbledore did not achieve it either. Shaw vaguely felt that no matter spells, potions, or alchemy, the ultimate research was to explore the soul to gain eternal life. However, these were not what Shaw could take care of for the time being, but they made him know the steps he needed to take to improve his transfiguration skills. With a plan in mind, he arrived at the charms classroom unknowingly. The layout of the charms classroom is similar to that of the transfiguration classroom. The most distinctive one is the charms professor Flitwick. This is a surprisingly small wizard who is suspected to have goblin blood. During class, he has to stand on a pile of books to reach the desk. Today's charms class is 2 classes in a row, which is considered a large class, and it is still held together with Ravenclaw College. Shaw took Draco to sit in the first row, just next to Hermione. Draco has good talent and is not resistant to this exclusive area for academic masters, but this is hard for Goyle and Crabbe, 2 poor students. Sitting in the first row is as awkward as having hemorrhoids on their buttocks. Hermione watched Shaw sit down next to him, and she was a little excited, but because of the professor, she could only say good afternoon. The spell taught by Professor Flitwick today is the levitation charm. Shaw did not because his levitation charm reached 3. I was distracted when I was at the level. Again, his understanding of magic was very shallow, and the more he pursued, the more he should pay attention to the basics. Professor Flitwick had a shrill voice and explained the spells in detail. He was also very patient. He knew everything about Shaw, who raised his hand from time to time to ask some details. The other party often made him suddenly realize something with just one word, and even applied it to other things. Hearing Shaw's inferences, Flitwick not only gave Shaw extra points, but also said that students like Shaw who were eager for knowledge should enter Ravenclaw. The little snakes were no longer surprised, and the chief should be so excellent. Hermione was a little skeptical about life. She also gave extra points to Ravenclaw, but the questions she answered were all rote. Shaw never took the initiative to answer questions, but got the answers after asking questions, and got extra points by inferences. She planned to ask about this doubt after class. The second class was a practical class, and each person was given a feather. As expected, Shaw was the first to correctly use the levitation charm, and this time he blocked the system assistants and only used the correct spell and swinging of the cane. Shaw realized the difference between the two. To put it in a metaphor, using the system assistants is like using a tickle to stop an itch, which will feel alienated. If you cast the spell purely by yourself, it will be as refreshing as scratching it yourself. After being awarded points by Flitwick again, Hermione also succeeded in casting the spell and was also awarded points by the professor. Draco struggled for a while but still failed to cast the spell, so he looked at Shaw eagerly. Shaw changed seats with him out of fun, pointed at Hermione and started reading his notes. Draco looked very confused. He had eaten with Hermione and Harry in the Great Hall before, but Harry was the palliative, and he did not take the initiative to talk to Hermione. Now Shaw asked him to ask Hermione for advice, which made the arrogant Draco want to die. He opened his mouth several times but couldn't speak. Hermione naturally knew what Shaw meant, and she couldn't help but feel a little proud. Shaw saw that Draco was struggling for a long time, so he had to say something. Draco, it's not shameful to ask for help from someone who is stronger than you. Didn't you say that you have abandoned the idea of pure blood supremacy? Why are you saying one thing and thinking another? Draco's face turned red, and a strand of his platinum hair fell down and curved into an S shape, just like his tangled heart. Shaw stretched out his hand to smooth his hair. A big back hair is the most handsome. Draco raised his head, exhaled a breath of turbid air, and tried to keep a straight face. Hermione, please teach me how to cast the levitation spell. But don't be proud, I will definitely learn other spells before you in the future. Hermione laughed, and suddenly felt that Draco was quite cute. She coughed and said seriously, I just observed your spell casting. Your spell pronunciation is not accurate. Wingardium Leviosa, the sound of mu should be long and clear. I will show you. Hermione used her wand to cast a spell on the feather on the table. Wingardium Leviosa. The feather slowly floated up after hearing the sound. Draco didn't say anything, but just silently took his wand and started practicing. Hermione didn't care and continued to teach seriously. 10 minutes later, Draco finally succeeded in casting the spell. Before he had time to be happy, Shaw spoke. Draco, thank Hermione, then go teach Goyle and Crabbe. Draco's joyful expression immediately solidified, and the platinum hair on his forehead turned into. Chapter 27. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Professor Flitwick announced the end of Get Out of Class, Hermione asked Shaw. Sure, why am I? Shaw was afraid that Hermione's gatling mouth would keep asking questions, so he quickly waved his hand. I know what you want to ask. It's actually very simple. Reading is not about rote memorization. If you want to have a deep knowledge, you need to think and ponder over and over again. People's energy is limited, so you have to make some choices in the choice of knowledge. Hermione, you read too many books. Although you are knowledgeable, you are just studying hard. Hermione was stunned for a moment. Shaw had said it very clearly, she was a bookworm. She would memorize anything she felt necessary, but she didn't think for herself. If she followed this path, she might become a strong person, but she would never become a super strong person. Shaw didn't disturb Hermione's meditation. He raised his legs and walked out again, but failed again. It was Draco who was blocking the road. His handsome slick back hair had long been rubbed into a mess by himself, and it was full of sweat stains, and he was very tired. Sure, why should I teach two idiots? Behind him, Goyle and Crabbe lowered their heads in shame. Shaw was so tired. It was not good to be reborn too young. He was surrounded by a group of immature children. He always had to be a spiritual mentor. Draco, do you think the gap between you and me is bigger, or is it the gap between you and Goyle and the others? Draco was puzzled by the question, but he still answered honestly. It should be the gap between me and you. After all, I can't even use the levitation spell properly. Shaw continued to teach earnestly. In that case, if I refuse to teach you in the future and despise you for your low strength and unworthy of following me, will you cry? Draco was stunned. He was also a smart man and immediately understood what Shaw meant. You mean that the weak are not worthy of following you? Similarly, I cannot have weak people under my command, and as their leader, I have to be responsible for improving their strength. Shaw was stunned, and thought well, so he patted his shoulder. Well, I barely understand the first level of meaning. Let's go, it's time to eat. Hermione also came back to her senses at this time, silently hugged several large leisure books in her arms, and prepared to return them to the library later. Several people walked towards the hall together, and Shaw and Draco returned to the Slytherin table. Hermione knew that they would have to go back to the lounge for evening self-study after dinner, so she didn't go together. Not long after she returned to the Ravenclaw table, Harry got rid of Ron and came to find her. Ron and the others said that the homework is due next week, so there is no need to rush to write it. They also want to invite me to play wizard chess. Then why don't you go? Shaw has organized the entire Slytherin to study in the evening, and Draco can study with Shaw at any time. If I don't work hard, the gap between us will only get bigger and bigger. Harry, you have grown up, and you will definitely become a great person like your parents in the future. 7:30 p.m., Slytherin, the lounge is arranged into 6 areas, and in each area, sofas and flat tables are arranged in a circle. At this moment, the seats are basically full of people, all writing homework seriously, making rustling sounds. Several senior class leaders and excellent students have been arranged with a schedule to patrol on time, and they must seriously tutor those who don't understand. So the learning atmosphere in the entire lounge is pretty good. Of course, there are also those who are just filling in the numbers, such as those pure-blood thorns who always whisper to each other about something, but it doesn't hurt the overall situation. On the wall lamp next to him, there were 3 people hanging again, all of whom were late and hiding in the dormitory. Well, Marcus is still on the list. At this moment, Shaw was sitting on a small sofa on the high platform reading a book. He could overlook the whole scene just by looking up. This was the layout of personal worship he deliberately created. Under the subtle influence, the blind obedience in the heart could quietly take shape. At the entrance of the lounge, Snape hid in the shadows, looking at the orderly Slytherin, and his heart was quite complicated. With empty eyes, he glanced at Shaw, who was elegant and indifferent on the high platform, and a figure in his memory gradually overlapped with the other party. Snape clenched his fists, waved his robe sleeves, turned around and floated away. Not long after, Snape was already standing at the door of the principal's office. Cockroach pile. After reciting the password, the spiral staircase appeared. Snape stepped up, and pushed the door directly. "Oh, it's Severus." Dumbledore, who was teasing Fawkes in front of the bird stand, knew who the person was without turning around. Snape didn't waste any words and asked directly. "The omnipotent headmaster, why did you help Shaw resist the pressure from the outside world? You should have expelled him directly. Do you know what he is doing in Slytherin now? I seem to see another mysterious person again." Dumbledore Leto turned around and looked at Snape through his blue glasses. "Sure. As the headmaster, isn't it natural for him to protect students from wind and rain? And what kind of person he can become also requires us teachers to guide him." Snape punched the desk, and the bang startled the previous headmasters who were dozing in the picture frame on the wall. "Then look at what he has done now. He is about to turn Slytherin into his own barracks. It won't be long before he has his own Death Eaters like that man back then." In the picture frame, Phineas Black couldn't help but curse. "You scum, how can my great-grandson be a bad guy? He is recasting the glory of Slytherin. You don't deserve it." Snape waved his wand casually, and Phineas immediately shut up. He still stared at Dumbledore. Dumbledore sat down after returning to his desk and said warmly, "Isn't Slytherin College getting better now? As the dean, shouldn't you be happy? Severus, you are too sensitive. You know, Shaw has love." Snape had enough of Dumbledore's hypocrisy, and his voice became even colder. "I don't care what dirty deal you have with that arrogant boy. Even if there is a third Dark Lord, it's not my concern. I just ask you, are you sure that man is not dead?" That when Dumbledore mentioned this, his expression became a little serious. "Severus, I feel that he has returned. I just hope my trap is useful. Please protect Harry. His eyes are very similar to Lily's." Snape took a few deep breaths and barely suppressed the guilt and longing in his heart. "Ha, I know." After that, he regained his indifference again, flicked his robe sleeves, turned around and slammed the door like a big bat. Dumbledore tapped the table lightly with his hands, wondering what he was thinking about. On the desk, there was a letter from the International Confederation of Wizards, which reported on the unusual movements of the remnants of the witch party. "Alas, Tom seems to have returned, and Gellert is in trouble again. As for Shaw, let's wait and see for now. I hope he can really find the Horcrux." Dumbledore stood up with a tired look and instructed Fawkes. "Please send me to Nermangard." Chapter 28. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, the GAD you asked for is here. Let's eat it first, and there will be more later. Note, GAD is the official gay couple. The love-hate relationship between the elderly. Those who are not used to it can skip it. The content is basically Grindelwald covering for the protagonist, except for the warm plot. Austria, Nermangard. Dumbledore looked up at the familiar slogan on the tower, "For the greater good." Memories flashed in his eyes, sweet, bitter, and so on. Although Nermangard is a prison, it has never been high walls and thick walls that trap people. Perhaps, it can't be trapped now. At this time, more than a dozen energetic old men emerged from the tower, and they all took out their wands and pointed them at Dumbledore. "Dumbledore! How dare you come here? Damn it, form a formation, protect the master." Dumbledore was surprised at the mental state of these diehard saints, and did not take their threats seriously. Abernathy appeared at the entrance, straightened his back and looked directly at Dumbledore. "Let him come over, the master summons him. Dumbledore walked past the crowd calmly and winked at them. The saints were trembling with anger. They came to the top floor with familiarity, but when they arrived in front of the cell, Dumbledore hesitated. "Since you are here, just come in, you are still so indecisive." Grindelwald's voice came from the inner room. Dumbledore sighed slightly, stretched out his hand to push open the door and walked in. The dilapidated cell in memory is no longer there, replaced by an extremely familiar scene. Is it familiar? Even if I have never been to the principal's office of Hogwarts, I can still decorate the room to your favorite look. Grindelwald, who was looking at the scenery from the window, teased, but careful people could detect that his voice was slightly trembling. Dumbledore came to the desk, took a piece of candy from the pile of desserts that were obviously prepared for him, put it in his mouth, and said vaguely, "You are always so considerate, this damn charm." Grindelwald turned around and took a few steps to Dumbledore, and his nose almost touched his face. The familiar breath came into his nose, and Grindelwald couldn't help but take a long breath. Although the two of them had more spiritual resonance before, the 2 months of living together in the valley had already engraved each other's breath into their bones. "Your breath is still full of sweet fragrance, so fascinating, but unfortunately, it doesn't belong to me alone." After saying that, he turned around abruptly, came to the desk and sat down, and restored his domineering look. "Come on, Albus, what are you doing here, to see if I'm rotten?" Dumbledore rubbed his temples, and then he also became serious. "Gellert, I should ask you what you want to do. You promised me that you would stay here forever." Grindelwald became careless again. "Don't worry, I'm over 100 years old. I don't have the spirit to destroy the world. I just want to be better." "Are you so cruel to me now? Are you really willing to watch me suffer?" Dumbledore rested his palms on the table, leaned over and looked at Grindelwald, pleading. "Gellert, please answer me directly, what do you want to do?" At close range, both of them could feel each other's breathing. Grindelwald couldn't help but reach out and gently straighten Dumbledore's collar, and said softly, "Alas, I can't always refuse your request. Okay, the future I predicted has changed. Don't worry, Albus, I won't cause you any trouble." Dumbledore closed his eyes and pondered for a few seconds. The two knew each other well, so Gellert's words could not be believed, but he also got the answer he wanted. After opening his eyes, Dumbledore took out a broken necklace from his bosom and placed it on the table. "I will often visit you, an old widower. If you really want something, you can tell me and let those people move less." Dumbledore left for a long time, and Grindelwald still stared at the necklace on the table in a daze. This broken blood oath hinted that the relationship between the two was no longer the same as before, and Albus would always stare at him. "Cruel and philanthropic guy, huh, who else would love you except me?" Hogwarts, Slytherin Common Room. It's 8 o'clock, everyone will automatically disperse. As Shaw announced the end of the evening self-study, some people couldn't help but make a noise, but seeing that others were staring at them, they quickly shut up embarrassedly. Then they all started to pack up their things, and their movements were as decent as possible. Some people were still concentrating on doing their homework. When everyone passed by the high platform, they basically bowed slightly to Shaw. Shaw also nodded politely. Except for those who were still doing their homework. After everyone else returned to the dormitory, Shaw turned to the 3 people hanging on the wall lamp. "Are you convinced now, that the 3 people were cast under the throat-locking and tongue-sealing curse, so they could only nod to show their submission?" Shaw looked at the progress of conquering Hogwarts, One Ring, which was still stuck at 99%. After sighing and waving his hand, 3 basketball-sized rotating water balls appeared above the heads of the 3 people, and Shaw asked again, "Are you convinced?" The 3 people looked terrified and nodded more. Seeing that the progress was still unchanged, Shaw could only convince people with virtue and pressed his palm down. The water ball immediately fell on the heads of the 3 people, and they couldn't help but groan in the electric water. Their bodies couldn't stop shaking, and their eyeballs began to roll up. Shaw also heard a sound of people sucking in cold air from the direction of the dormitory behind him. Before he could continue to ask the people on the wall lamp if they were convinced, he heard the prompt sound that the task progress had been completed. Shaw was slightly surprised and felt that he had made a mistake. Maybe the 3 people on the wall lamp had already convinced. and the one who was not convinced was a guy in the dormitory behind him who was not convinced. Oh, it doesn't matter. Ding, conquer Hogwarts, first ring, completed, reward 1000 first level faith points. Ding, issue the task, conquer Hogwarts, second ring, gain the hearts of students from the other 3 colleges, progress, 12%. Task reward, 200 second level faith points, 1 legendary point. Xiao Er glanced at the new task. The reward was really good, and there was also a legendary point, but the difficulty was too high. After all, it was not convenient for him to operate in other colleges. Fortunately, it was just to gain people's hearts. He should only make those people admire or like him. The progress itself reached 12%, which was very telling. Xiao Er came back to his senses and saw that the 3 people on the wall lamp were foaming at the mouth, so he quickly waved his hand to tear off the water ball. By the way, I got the 3 of them down. It was already like this, so it was not suitable to hang around all night. He was kind after all. He asked people to send the wounded back to the dormitory, and then he returned to his own dormitory. When he came in, he saw Draco scolding Goyle and Crabbe for being idiots with a black face. The 2 little fat guys were trembling and were casting spells on the feathers on the bed with their wands. Shaw smiled and stepped forward to pat Draco on the shoulder. Be patient, use love to influence them. This process can also be regarded as a tempering of your character. For those who achieve great things, a calm character is very important. Draco's face fell, and he complained in his heart, love is bullshit, you don't need to teach me, but he said honestly. I know. Shaw saw that Draco was not very motivated, and knew that if he wanted Malfoy to run, he had to give Malfoy grass. So he took out a special alchemical playing card from the ring and shook it in front of him. Do you know him? Chapter 29. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Draco's eyes immediately became hot, and his eyes followed the shaking poker cards. Yeah, I know, this is the alchemical prop you used on the train, it's amazing. Shaw continued to shake the poker cards in his hand like teasing a puppy. You want it very much, right? Draco looked eager. Can you give it to me? If you teach Goyle and Crabbe 10 practical spells including the disarming charm and the armor charm, it will be yours. Draco became interested. Really? Shaw rolled his eyes at him, put away the poker cards, and sat down on his bed. He began to seriously inject the water prison in the form of a water python into the card in his hand, and Draco regrouped, threw his drooping hair back, turned around and said seriously to Goyle and Crabbe. You 2 can't learn the levitation spell tonight, so you're not allowed to sleep. Goyle and Crabbe looked at Shaw in the distance with resentment. Their hearts were very complicated. They also knew that Shaw was doing this for their own good, to make them stronger, but their understanding. Shaw concentrated for 2 hours before he finished a poker card. Today was only 1 day of class, so his speed was a little faster than before. So it's worth taking classes seriously, but I don't know when I can realize the card version of Wanjian Guizhong. Putting the cards away, he only planned to get 1 tonight, and then opened the system to check. Host, Shaw, occupation, wizard/poker magician, magic, 40, adult 100, talent, thunder element affinity max water element affinity level 1. Parseltongue level 1, dark magic 8, Azkaban. Transfiguration 5, superb talent, expand, talent points, 1, skills, occlumency max. Black magic, level 3 killing curse, white magic, level 5 water prison, level 5 birds flock, level 1 faith, 1700. / level 2 faith, 67. / level 3 faith, 0 mission, seize the savior's reputation, ring 1, reward, 10,000 level 1 faith, 1 legendary point. Conquer Hogwarts, ring 2, reward, 200 level 2 faith, 1 legendary point, inherit the witch party, reward, 300 level 2 faith, 1 legendary point. The rewards for the 3 missions are indeed tempting, but the difficulty is getting harder and harder, and there is not much faith left. Shaw sighed. Alas, it's so hard to become stronger. He gritted his teeth and prepared to go to the room of requirement on the 8th floor at night, where there is still a wool to be pulled, but when he looked up, he saw Draco teaching Goyle and Crabbe with a stern face. It was not easy to walk, he could not destroy his self-centered personality, he could only give up and read the transfiguration experience given by Professor McGonagall. There was no conversation that night, no. There was still something to say that night. Draco didn't teach the two idiots until 3 in the morning, and after hundreds of millions of brain cells died, he finally taught them, and his own levitation spell was almost at the level of a second-level spell, which was definitely better than Hermione. Draco suddenly understood the second reason why Shaw asked him to teach the two idiots. Then there was really no conversation that night. At 6:30 in the morning, Draco felt that he had just fallen asleep, and he was electrocuted. And fell under the bed again. After Draco climbed out from under the bed with dark circles under his eyes, he looked at Shaw, who was about to go out with a face full of resentment. The brother cried, "It's so hard to become strong." But when he washed up and went to the first-year study area in the lounge with 2 followers, he immediately returned to his nature. He raised his chin and started to brag. "Huh, you idiots, you can't even cast a simple levitation spell, not even as good as Goyle and Crabbe, you two idiots, show them a show." Shore on the podium couldn't help but hold his forehead. Not all the members arrived this morning, but the 3 people were accidentally electrocuted by him last night. Their class leader helped to ask for leave, and Shaw didn't insist and approved it. After 8 o'clock, Shaw led the way, and the students lined up in 2 rows and walked towards the hall. When he met Filch, the castle administrator, Shaw said politely, "Mr. Filch, good morning." The hundreds of people behind him looked at each other. It was nothing for them to say hello to professors and classmates, but Filch was a dud. Even Alice, who supported Shaw infinitely, was somewhat resistant. Shaw saw that no one behind him said anything, and turned around abruptly. "Where are your manners?" Everyone had no choice but to hum and hum vaguely. "Good morning, Mr. Filch." Filch had been stunned when Shaw greeted him, and now he heard hundreds of people greeting him together, and the broom fell to the ground in shock. Shaw ignored him and led the team to the hall again, nodding to everyone and being extremely polite, but he had a new task to win the hearts of the other 3 colleges, and now he had to lay the groundwork bit by bit. For the sake of strength, he had to endure grievances. But this was not grievance, just more polite, still under everyone's surprised eyes. The students of the Snake College took their seats one by one and ate quietly. TSK, Slytherin is really amazing. My girlfriend over there said that they still have morning and evening self-study now. Really? Slytherin students are easier to find jobs than us after graduation. Why are they still working so hard now? Do you have to be so competitive? Alas, I don't deserve to be excellent. I'll just wait to rot slowly. Grr, let's go play Quidditch at noon. Harry didn't go to Ravenclaw today. He always went to find Hermione. There were gossips in Gryffindor that the savior liked to stay in the pile of cosmetics. Ron, who was standing by, drank a glass of pumpkin juice. Seeing that Harry was reading a book even while eating, he pouted. Harry, why are you so serious? We are still children. We should play hard now. Harry's eyes twitched. He had heard that Ron's brothers were all top students. Even though the twins were a little naughty, their grades were still good. So why was Ron like this? Harry was kind after all, and he couldn't bear to say anything to hurt his roommate. The twins opposite suddenly said, Hey, Harry, why don't you go on a night tour with us tonight? It's so exciting. I'll tell you a secret. There is a beast locked in the restricted area on the 4th floor. It seems to be guarding some treasure. Harry suddenly raised his head and suddenly seemed to think of something, which was the treasure that Hagrid took from Gringotts. He hurriedly ate the chicken leg in his hand, picked up the book and went to find Hermione. Ron felt a little uncomfortable when he saw Harry running to find Miss Know-It-All again. Others envied him for being roommates and good friends with Harry, but he knew that Harry hated him a little. He looked up at Slytherin again, and saw Shaw, who was in the first place, with envy and jealousy in his eyes. Chapter 30. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the Slytherin long table, Alice ate very little. After finishing her meal early, she began to report to Shaw about the changes in the mentality of the students in the Serpentine Academy. Most of the half-bloods and some marginal purebloods are actually watching from the sidelines due to your thundering methods, expecting the counterattack of the elite purebloods. The situation of the lower-grade students is better. Shaw took a sip of soy milk before speaking. It doesn't matter. The long-term indoctrination of the fathers is not so easy to reverse. As long as they don't provoke openly, they will sooner or later be convinced by my gentle methods. Alice's mouth twitched. Is Shaw's method still gentle and gentle? Draco on the side couldn't hold it back and accidentally choked the food in his mouth. Ahem. Shaw glanced at the two of them. Am I wrong? Alice spoke quickly. I firmly support all the decisions of the chief. Draco had food in his mouth and was slow to react. He could only mumble, yes, you are right. Shore had also finished eating, and said faintly while wiping his mouth with a napkin. There is an old saying in the East, a filial son is born under the stick, and a champion is born after a sea of questions. Sooner or later you will know how good I am to you. Just then, a group of owls flew over the hall again. Today, Shaw received a lot fewer howlers. He followed the same method and easily surrounded and destroyed more than a dozen howlers with water prisons, but the Slytherin long table still emitted a series of sharp howls. In front of a dozen pure-blood wizards, including Draco, they were facing the destruction of the howlers. Draco, you are so bold that you dare to question the noble blood of Malfoy. Have you forgotten what I told you since you were a child? I will deal with you after we get home. Theodore not, you must remember your last name is not. You dare to worship the kid from the Black family. You are really self-degrading. If you don't listen to your sister, I will deduct your pocket money. Marcus, you are a waste. You can't even beat a freshman. I don't have a son like you. How did I educate you? You can't beat him openly, so you play dirty tricks. The people who received the howling letters wrote to their families last night, either complaining or frankly supporting Shaw. Naturally, there would be no good results. After the last howling letter burned itself, the whole hall was quiet. The students of the other three colleges didn't expect Shaw to face such great pressure. While people like Ron were very gloating, Shaw scratched his numb ears and looked at the changing expressions of the students in the Snake College. He stood up from the chief's seat, his elegant and handsome face solemn. No matter what your family members say, as long as you haven't dropped out and are still in Slytherin, you have to listen to me. Shore suppressed the mysterious and restless atmosphere with one word, and then stared at Marcus with ill intentions. As for those who want to play tricks secretly, I welcome them very much. What about the consequences? Ha! Marcus sat on the ground in fear, shouting incoherently. I don't want to play tricks, I won't listen to my family. Others looked sideways, amazed that Shaw had such a terrifying deterrent power in just 3 days. Just one sentence scared the usually ferocious and arrogant Marcus like this. For Marcus's performance, Shaw smiled, and sighed that this chicken used for waiting would probably be useless in the future, waved casually. Okay, everyone, line up and go to class. The little snakes who came back to their senses hurriedly said in unison. Yes, Chief. After the students of Slytherin College left the stage in an orderly manner, the students of the other 3 colleges came back to their senses one after another, with all kinds of complicated thoughts. Even Ron, who was cursing Shaw in his heart, couldn't help but shrink his neck. On the way to the defense against the dark arts classroom, Shaw looked at the progress of the Conquer Hogwarts, second ring, task, which had reached 20%. Well, it's good, I just don't know where to find another chicken. The doors and windows of the defense against the dark arts classroom were closed, and a garlic smell filled the entire space. Professor Quirrell, who was wrapped in a big turban on the stage, stuttered and read from the textbook. The students below the stage were bored. Shaw sat directly in the last row today, one because he didn't want to attract Voldemort's attention, and the other was for the sake of his nose. The little snakes made a similar choice, and gave the front seat to the honest Hufflepuff children who were in the same class with them. Shaw knew that they would learn little from this class, so he quietly signaled the little snakes to study their textbooks. He also took out a Transfiguration textbook titled Analysis of the Structure of 100 Animals and read it carefully. Read it, this is what I asked Hermione to help me borrow from the library yesterday. This kind of basic transfiguration introductory book is actually very lacking in the Black Family Library. Analysis of the structure of 100 animals contains various analyses of animal bodies. Transfiguration is not just about shaping something into a desired appearance. The internal structure is equally important. Advanced transfiguration can turn a piece of stone into a vivid magical creature. Legendary transfiguration can even temporarily rejuvenate one's own body and restore combat power to its peak. Professor McGonagall's notebook mentioned that Dumbledore may have been able to do this. Legendary transfiguration, conjecture, can even create a person who can use a magic wand, which is comparable to the Chinese legend of throwing beans to make soldiers. When Shaw was looking at the analysis of creatures such as pythons, he was inexplicably named by Quirrell. Shaw, you come, answer, about the red hat, how to expel it. Shaw's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he was finally targeted. After he stood up, he looked up at Quirrell, who was cowering. Professor, the red hat is a bloodthirsty creature similar to a goblin. It often appears in the dungeons of ancient castles or battlefield ruins, waiting to attack those who are lost. As for how to deal with it, I think it is better to kill it than to expel it. I suggest using the crushing spell. Quirrell was a little dumbfounded and didn't know how to comment for a while. What Shaw said before was all right, and he ended with a violent killing. His head suddenly hurt, and he immediately came back to his senses and stammered. Ahem, this method is very suitable for a talented little wizard like you. Other students just need to use the light spell to expel it. Slytherin plus 5 points. After Shaw sat down, he touched his chin and pondered, and then he didn't take it to heart. In Hogwarts, Voldemort didn't dare to do anything openly before stealing something, but after class, Shaw was stopped by Quirrell again, and Quirrell signaled that others could leave before speaking. Sure, I'll be free in a while, are you? Shaw sighed secretly. Professor, is there something? Yes, it's like this, your talent, is not suitable for the normal teaching progress of students. I'm going to take you back to the office to make up for it. Shaw felt that this line sounded familiar. He didn't have time to think about those things, and quickly declined. Professor, I have to host Slytherin's evening study later. But Shaw suddenly felt cold, as if he saw a sharp light flashing in Quirrell's eyes, thinking that it was not appropriate to confront Voldemort for the time being, so he added. Of course, I am very honored for the professor's preference. When the evening study is on the right track, I will come to learn from you. Quirrell said a few words to Voldemort in his heart, and then started to talk nonsense. Your father was my senior and took good care of me, so I really can't bear to waste your magical talent. Remember to come to my office before next Friday. Quirrell said this very smoothly and left on his own. Shaw stood there in silence, with ripples of anger in his deep and calm eyes. Old Voldemort, you dare to threaten me, humph, don't blame me for fleecing you. It seems that I must go to the room of requirement tonight. And on the first day of school, the note he gave Dumbledore was, I also found the whereabouts of a Horcrux, and the clue is in Hogwarts.